Hey guys, how's it going? Orange Kripparrian here. Not bad. Got this for a month or so. Anyway, today I want to talk about the high roll decks. It's a term that we've kind of brought up a lot since Mean Streets of Gadgetzan because that is what it took to beat some of the very consistent, ridiculously powerful decks like, well, actually only Jade Druid, and that's kind of still around. But the high roll thing has kind of grown a lot since then. It's really like a category of decks. You have the aggressive decks, which encompass some of the more mid-range decks as well. You have the, top tier decks, and then you have basically the high roll decks that try to squeeze out a win or two, and sometimes the high roll decks are some of the top tier decks. The reason I want to make this video is because Hearthstone Replay a few days back, I didn't get a chance to do the video right away, but a few days back they released statistics on the win rates based on you playing specific cards. And in this case they did a study on what happens with your win rate based on what comes out of Barns when you play it on turn 4. And those are the results. Basically, anytime you get a Yashiraj pulling another minion, you win almost all the time. I mean, 90% win rate in Hearthstone is really ridiculous. And you can see that basically anytime you actually just have Barns on turn 4, you win 65% of the time on average. And that's really good. You have to keep in mind, most decks, when played by the average player, typically have very close to a 50% win rate. Actually, I think High Roll Priest has about a 50% win rate, by the way. Maybe it's like 51, but I think it's actually dead on 50%. So you have to imagine when the deck doesn't do this, it's the inverse of that. You're looking at like 30% win rate when you don't draw Barns, So really, the issue that I take with this is we see the numbers. We see just how ridiculous this is. So keep in mind, to come up with these statistics, there's two things being hit here. So the first is playing Barns on turn 4. Just drawing Barns by turn 4 and playing it on curve. How much of that is associated with your ability to play Hearthstone? Does your ability to play Hearthstone influence whether or not you can play Barns on turn 4? And the answer is obviously no. It's just, do you happen to get Barns on turn 4? Then the second, really big outcome is what comes out of Barns on turn 4? Do you get Yashiraj or do you get one of the other minions? Because if you get Yashiraj, that game is basically a guaranteed win unless you screw something up. Does that have anything to do with your ability to play the game? No. It does not have anything to do with your ability to play the game. So this follows a whole category of decks. The high roll decks, I believe, all have very similar models to these. The other type of decks that we see are fairly aggressive decks, and some of the more meta decks, you see those enough to where you get used to it. And basically what my point is, we have a whole entire constructed system that just about plays itself. There are a few decks that I've been playing that, are not quite as successful as most of the ones I've talked about today. I've actually played my fair share of Combo Warrior the last few days, and while the results I've been putting up with that deck certainly not that good, but what I do really like about that deck is most of the time I am responsible for the wins and the losses. Most of the time I lose, maybe not most, but close to half the time I lose, it's actually because I made a mistake. Not because I didn't draw Barns on turn 4, not because Barns didn't pull Yashiraj against a particular matchup. It's because I didn't play very well that I lost. And a lot of the games that I win, it's because I played very well that I won. And I think this is the single most core aspect of any big game these days. Hearthstone had this to a larger degree, and I think it's diminished over time, and I think it's something we should be very well aware of, especially now that we have numbers behind it. It's not just me telling you that this is happening, it is clearly happening, and there's statistics to back up the fact that your success playing the high roll decks is very close to 100% based on draw luck. That's dumb, all right? The reason why it's important to have your results correlate with how you play the game in a fairly big way is because it gives satisfaction. It gives satisfaction to know that you won or lost based on how you play. It gives you satisfaction to know that as you are getting better at the game, your results with that deck are improving. Now, to a lesser degree, that's still the case for High Roll Barnes Priest, but a lot less of a case. A lot less of a case for a lot of the decks on ladder right now, and lately. And I mean like probably since Mean Streets lately. It's pretty important to realize this because you have to take this understanding from a player who is not as veteran as possibly me, possibly some of you guys. A lot of people who play this game, they're average. You know, they're pretty good. They have a lot of room to improve, but it's very difficult to improve when the results of nearly every game that you play don't have to do with the player who makes the right plays winning. Just a bunch of crap happens. And when just a bunch of crap happens and you really lack the understanding to figure out and settle for that, I think you're misguided in how you perceive the game. You don't understand why you lost. You don't understand why you won. You think you played better, but you just lost. You know, you think you played really well in that game, but you just lost. Just your deck didn't work out for you, but what is it? You know, all these questions are sometimes difficult for me to understand when I'm playing the game, and I know the game pretty well. For the average player, I think it's very important that the plays that they see that impress them, that they know are the right plays, actually correlate with wins. And we haven't seen that in a really long time. So that's kind of how I wanted to swing that topic. I think it's pretty important. And, you know, it's more of a systemic thing. Blizzard can't really come in and change Barnes because there's a lot of high roll decks out there. So many decks are, reliant on having a very specific card on curve, whether it's a specific one drop in an aggro deck like Mana Worm and Tempo Mage, sometimes it's a specific weapon on like turn 2 or 3. This happens so much. It's a systemic thing that I think they have to really take into account when they're designing these cards. And yeah, kind of want to see my old Hearthstone back. I don't even mean like 5 years ago. I mean like Old Gods. Old Gods is such a good time where I feel almost every good thing about Hearthstone was great. And yeah, that was like a bit over a year ago, but man, I'm going to miss the times when those cards rotate out at the start of 2018. In any case, hope you guys enjoy my thoughts, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.